super excited to welcome our guests from the League of Cities. Hi.
Hi.
Kate and Don. So they are here. I was actually very intrigued to learn about the League of Cities. Nina told us about you, and I was like, wow, you should come. You need to come and share with our members like how they can best work with their own. So here you are. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Katie and I both work at the National League of Cities, and we both had the honor and privilege to work with Nina and some Moms Rising folks on a couple of projects. So we are well aware of the amazing work that you guys do, and we're happy to be able to join you today to talk a little bit about working with your municipal leaders and working at the local level. So just for a little bit of context, the National League of Cities is a membership organization. We've been around for over 90 years. We represent cities and towns across the country, small towns, big cities. We have 17 dues-paying members at the moment, but we represent all 19,000 cities and villages and towns across the country. Within the National League of Cities, there is an Institute for Youth, Education, and Families, and that's where both Katie and I work. This institute was created back in 2000 under the leadership of the late Boston Mayor Thomas Menino, who really wanted to help support city leaders to provide for their residents and to improve outcomes for kids and families. So that's our organization. We work with city leaders to implement different projects and provide services. So myself, I'll just give a couple of examples and then turn it over to Katie. But for the economic opportunity and financial empowerment team, which I work on, we work kind of on two lanes, one around financial inclusion and financial empowerment, and the other around sort of this idea of access to benefits. So, and that's where I generally work most. So I have experience working on projects with city leaders to increase participation in the federally funded after school and summer meal programs. So really making that connection between how city leaders can help connect their families who may be food insecure to the programs and nutrition programs that help them to thrive. Because we know that only a small portion of kids that that rely on school lunches have stable and consistent meals outside that. And so we're really working with city leaders to engage them to help provide those programs for their residents. And then the other project I worked on is working with cities to help design and implement outreach and enrollment campaigns to connect their kids to Medicaid and CHIP. The idea being that city leaders have a role to play in connecting their families to these important services, whether it's meals or health coverage or early childhood or whatever it is. There is definitely a role for city leaders in providing these programs. So, just a couple of things really kind of came out key as sort of those first steps and things to keep in mind when working at the local level. The first being, be attentive and be aware, make sure that city leaders are aware of you and are aware of your issues that you find important. So across the different projects that I've worked on, we've taken teams of people to city council meetings to make sure that they're both there present and can hear what the council is talking about and what the sort of agenda and topic is for the city. But also, there are public comment periods, or you can get on the agenda of these meetings, and it's an opportunity to be able to raise your issue up to the city level. So definitely taking part, like someone mentioned here in DC, that's pretty much all we have is that city council piece. So going there and making sure that, the issues that you want to talk about are being talked about and kind of are raised up at that level. So being active and being attentive to those issues and making your issues relevant is one key thing. The other thing that I would add, which I think Jamie also touched on at the state level, is we tend to kind of think about these things sort of on that negative side. It's always, why aren't you doing this? What can you please do this instead? It's sort of on that negative twist. But the other thing to keep in mind is you can also thank your representatives and thank your mayors and local leaders for supporting the issues that you find important. And that's something that actually we worked with Nina and Moms Rising on, was doing these thank you campaigns, which I think it might have been Nina's idea, which is such a great idea, was to develop these, life-size thank you cards that had people sign. I think it was the Moms Rising network signing these thank you cards. We delivered it to the mayors at city council meetings. and thanked them for committing to and supporting medication outreach, and letting them know that, you know, we're happy that they're taking part of this, and we just want to give them some positive appreciation. It's not all negative. Sometimes they actually can help us and do what we want them to do. So being sure to kind of keep both of those things in mind, you know, nudging and pushing when they're not doing what you want them to do, and then also thanking them and being appreciative, recognizing them when they are.
Yeah, and so just a couple other things that we wanted to mention. So my specific area of work is on early childhood education and trying to get mayors and city council members and other city leaders to help support the early childhood system and improve it in any way that they can. And as many of you probably know, early childhood is often something that many city leaders don't really understand is in their purview. And so one thing that we try to do is really connect early childhood to the mayor or city council members' priorities. And so, you know, if a mayor's priority is economic development, or if maybe a particular town is having a huge issue with the opioid crisis, try to connect whatever it is that you're talking about to those priorities. And you'll often be able to figure out what the mayor's or city council members' priorities are by looking at a state of the city address. Many mayors often give a state of the city address in January. City council members, you know, it kind of depends on the size of the town, but occasionally they'll have their own websites where you can see what the city priorities are, and then try to connect whatever it is, whatever your issue is, to those issues. With I find that it's pretty easy with early childhood. I think early childhood is related to everything. I think it improves the economic development of a city. It improves the workforce of the city. It allows parents to get to their jobs easier and be at work all day and improve the economic outlook for the city. So I think my issue area is really easy to do that with, but just try to think of a way that you can connect it to whatever that city leader is really wanting to put forth in their community. And then the other thing, something that I've seen work well in many places, is before the mayor or city council member is even elected, try to get them to come to a candidate forum or something like that. Often your local United Way will be hosting some sort of a candidate forum, or maybe you could ask them to do that. And then get them on record, you know, ask a question about whatever it is that your issue is. Of course, that's kind of the long game, because you're hoping that that person then gets into office and you can actually act on whatever it was that you got them on record for. But it worked extremely well in Austin, specifically on early childhood. They had candidate forums in each one of these city council members' districts and got them on record supporting early childhood. And now we have a whole bunch of city council members in Austin supporting early childhood education. And you can pretty much just show them that and be like, remember this? And it seems to work pretty well for us. Yeah, and then finally, and I think Don kind of mentioned this a little bit, just know that you have a voice. You are a strong constituency as moms in this community, and that you have a right to be there in their offices. Just going up to City Hall and walking in and saying who you are. I think it's hard because we're all so busy, and a lot of times government puts the onus on us to step up, but I know that you guys are all doing that every day just by being on this phone call. And Don and I really appreciate that. And that's kind of it. If you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to do what we can.
Does anybody have any questions? I have a question. Actually, it's more, I would like to ask you to comment. So, you know, a lot of people have sort of entered activism from sort of like a high level, right? After the election, they're like, okay, target the president, target our senators, target our congress people. And, you know, they're slamming their heads on their desks in frustration because they call and they can't get through. You know, they don't show up at town hall meetings, whatever. But I think things are different at the local level, right? Like you can get a lot more joy out of local activism.
You know, I think that definitely could be true. I think there's a lot more space for that to be true, certainly. You're right. Sometimes a city council member will answer the phone. You know, you have a lot more access. I can remember when I was working in an office in Austin the city council member. He had 2 staff members, and anyone can walk into his particular office and go chat with Councilmember Riley. And so you're absolutely right that you have a lot more access, and things happen much more quickly on that stage. I can remember, a constituent would come in and say, this is the issue. We would research that issue, and then 2 months later, there would be a bill up in front of City Council ready to go. And you're right, it can be a lot more joyful. Mm-hmm. Things can happen more quickly.
And I think to add to that, I think it's a more concrete and tangible thing. I think, given a lot of the sort of barriers and challenges that exist at the state and national level, the local level is kind of where you can get a little bit of movement on certain issues, and you can very easily access your leaders and go into the offices and talk to them. And depending on the city and the circumstance, it's different, but I think you have the ability to kind of talk more directly with your leaders. And then I think the focus, particularly right now, is on cities and on change at the local level, just given the knocking, banging your head up against the wall at every other level. So there is a need or understanding and awareness, I think, at every level on our side and on their side, that the city kind of is where that action's happening right now.
One other thing I would add, local leaders are keenly aware of that at this point in time. I think they have really understood that nothing is going to happen at the federal level. They cannot wait for things to pass in Congress, and so they are starting to move these issues on their own. Yeah. I know I've seen that in early childhood. I imagine the same is true on the health side, just because of the way that things are. Yeah. And so the time is right for things to happen at the local level.